the second.
Okay,
Too.
okay.
It's the second. So,
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest reason for the meeting, I mean, Mrs. Scott and Ms. Vicky want answers, but there's been a bit of, I don't know any other way to say it, some kind of lack of care going on with the nurses, and it feels like they're kind of getting the ring around with different things being said, where there doesn't seem like there's a cohesive plan, and they're just kind of looking for some concrete answers. I don't think they've gotten a prognosis yet. And Miss Vicky she actually gave us a little list of stuff to.
So Miss Vicky's your mom, right?
Yes,
yes.
So she was there that first day when I came and saw him in the emergency room.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a kind of a short visit.
Right,
but,
of course.
And it was when we were trying to make sure that we didn't have an immediate problem, where we had problems with the airway. But okay, yeah. What kind of questions do you have?
She wants to know the prognosis and kind of like a plan of care.
Yeah.
She wants to know options if radiology and chemo doesn't work, like what happens after the 25-day
Or 25,
radiation visit.
Yeah. So after we finish up the radiation
Yeah.
treatment.
Oh, look, there he is.
Yeah, good. Actually, we'll come in. Hey, Mr. Cabot, you want to
fact,
wheel him in away so we can all talk together? Well, we don't really have any room.
Well, no, I was gonna let you wheel in.
Yeah. Oh, we can do that too. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, we'll do that. We'll do it here. Like that. We'll make this in a little conference area. That's
There
good.
we go.
How you doing? Yeah, no, I hear you. What's going on with your arm?
There's a thing
It
left
was-
in his arm from a nurse, and he.
Basically, it was 4 syringes or just medicine, and it was taken out. It started hurting him. He alerted the nurses about it, but nobody notified any doctors. And over time, they started noticing it was past the black marks. But I don't know if they gave him any medicine, but they did start putting ice on it.
And they're waiting on an ultrasound result.
Yeah, the swelling started going.
So, we've been.
He just got here.
Yeah, like 5 seconds ago.
Yeah. So I haven't really gone into too much detail. So it's difficult to say how the prognosis is. I think that's what you were asking me about. And so we did do scans while we were here, like a CAT scan of the chest. That didn't show any obvious metastases, like things that had spread to the lung, but there's the tumors in the middle of the chest, in the mediastinum. That's what's causing all the problem. That's why you're having all the problems breathing, right? Is because we have a mass that's in the middle of the chest and it's actually pushing on the airway, and that's what made it such a dangerous situation and why we needed to get started, pretty quickly. Once we established that it was a cancer, and that it was the kind of cancer it was a cancer from the head and neck region. It was a squamous cell carcinoma. Once we established that was the case, then that's why we got started pretty quickly.
Okay.
So the prognosis is not good because it's pushing on this airway. Now, do I have hope, that we might be able to, take care of this? Yeah, I mean, I do. And that's, we're doing pretty aggressive treatment in that we're doing chemotherapy and radiation. That's probably the most aggressive treatment that would be appropriate. It wouldn't be appropriate to go into a surgery, which I don't think you wanted to do, but it wouldn't be appropriate to go in and try to do a big surgery because then it would be difficult to recover from, and we wouldn't be able to get it all if we were to do that. And so that's why we're doing radiation and chemo combined. The way that I have things going now is I have radiation treatments now that are delivering, treatment to a pretty big area here. After 25 treatments, I'm likely going to give more than that. We usually will do about 35 treatments altogether. And so after we get through those 25, we're going to come down to a little smaller area where just the tumor itself, not any extra margin. And we're going to give that, a little extra radiation. So all in all, it's probably going to be 6 to 7 weeks, more like 7 weeks of radiation altogether. And that's going to be with chemo, and that's with the hope of controlling it. Now, we do have a little complication in that we also have this spot on the tongue. We're not sure on what that is. If that's, I was going to have Dr. Chaston take a look at it, and if this is actually a recurrence then it becomes even more difficult to do treatment because we've already had radiation to this area. We could consider doing more radiation to that area, but it's going to be very tricky to do that. But I wanted to have Dr. Chaston look at it first.
Okay.
Possibly do a biopsy of that area.
Okay. And also, someone just came in from Dr. Brown talking about a stent. Is he wants to see if we can shrink this before we talk about a stent, but is that even an option?
Yeah, well, and the hope is that the radiation is going to shrink things.
Okay.
Sometimes, they can, and if we're in a situation where the radiation's not working or things seem to be getting much worse, we sometimes can consider putting in like a stent to like keep that airway open. But it doesn't treat the cancer,
Right.
and so that's why why doing the radiation, the chemo right now is preferred. And it sounds like Dr. Brown doesn't want to put a stent in until we see, how
Well,
things are doing, or is
we
that
don't know.
That
Yeah.
that might be his opinion. We
Yeah.
haven't heard from him yet
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
But I think he was on board with everything for the chemo and radiation. He was thumbs up on that.
Yeah.
It was kind of we had people coming in, like we had a very nice lady come in today. We didn't know who she was, but she was a part of Dr. Brown's team. That the first thing she kind of brought up was we're talking about options. An option is a stent. You can't get that here. You're probably gonna have to go to New Orleans. And it kind of just seemed like that was the first initial
Yeah.
part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
was.
it's just in my feeling is, it's just my feeling.
Yeah.
I've been down this road before, a similar road, but if we can isolate this area and treat it,
Right.
I can feed myself. The feeding tube. Shouldn't we try that before we start talking about stints?
Right. Yeah.
I don't understand stints.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit we don't see a lot of them in Lafayette. That's why they talked about if they were going to do it, you go to New Orleans. Yeah. I mean, in my mind, this is just my opinion, and I would like to see what Dr. Brown says. But I mean, in my mind, we've already started the radiation. We can, we're actually treating the cancer, and it should allow the tumor to shrink. Now, there are exceptions. Sometimes the cancer doesn't act the way we want it to, and that would be a situation where we may want to consider putting a stent. But the problem is too, though, is that if we get in a situation where the radiation's not working, it could become a problem quickly, because it's your airway. And so, that it would be something that, would become a problem, sort of immediately if that was the issue. Now, so far, things seem to be going okay. Your breathing doesn't seem to be getting any better though yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of early. I mean,
Yeah.
it's early. We haven't done much treatment.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you about
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not,
your breathing hasn't improved. Now, it hasn't necessarily. You've gotten more hoarse, I've noticed.
but I've only had 4 treatments.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you're right, but still, still we have to be cautious.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So is there like a timeline on when we'll know this is shrinking
Yeah.
before talking about a stent, or
Yeah.
do
I
we
mean,
know? Is it a thing?
with these squamous cell carcinomas, it can be weeks before,
yeah.
weeks of treatment before it starts to work. I mean, the good news is with the radiation starting, it's really unlikely to start getting worse
Okay.
in that short period of time. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be probably week 3 or week 4, where we're really going to start to see some
To
shrinkage,
see
and
what-
hopefully
if
then,
something. Okay.
yeah, hopefully then the airway will get better.
Okay.
But yeah,
So he wants to know if he could like wait to see if there's shrinkage before we do the stent. Like he doesn't.
yeah. Well, so the final decision a lot of times is going to be discussions that I have with the different doctors, right? Yeah. Well, so the tracheotomy, right? So sometimes people have cancers up here, and then you go and you do a tracheotomy and you get below the cancer, right? But in this case, it's much trickier because the cancer is here,
Okay.
right? And so there's no real procedure to go and put something lower than that, right? So that's why they're talking about, well, do we do a stent? So I would say that the final decision of these things is a lot of times is discussions that we have, kind of a back and forth between different doctors. So if Dr. Brown does, recommend a stent, then he and I will have to have a discussion about, well, how are we going to time that? When are we going to do it? Is that worth interrupting the radiation treatment to send you to New Orleans? That's then what we'll do. I mean, yeah, my gut says we would hold off on a stent.
Okay.
But and then we would use it for some reason if we didn't have any treatments like chemo and radiation available to us. But Dr. Brown may want to try to convince me otherwise. I don't know.
Okay.
But
So
Yeah.
what if that thing on his tongue is something?
so if the thing on the tongue is something, the area has been already irradiated. So the question would be, would Dr. Chaston be able to go in and just take it out?
Take it out.
Just remove that area. But could that be done in a way that wouldn't be difficult? That wouldn't be a difficult recovery. And if it's not, and if it is, in fact, something, well then I need to start doing some radiation to that area too, which would carry with it a whole bunch of other side effects. I would not be excited about giving you treatment there, but it's possible it could be the only choice. So well, no, you've already done. Yeah, you've done
one by Hannafo and one by Ryan Shasta.
Okay. Let me see that.
It's done.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Do you want it?
COVID test, that was earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I guess.
So we don't have. I don't have all the answers, definitely.
No, I don't.
Not
We
yet.
didn't-
I
Yeah.
definitely don't, and that's because it's such a precarious situation, but most of the time when I get these treatments started on a squamous cell carcinoma, like it did before, it's radiation's effective. Radiation does make the tumor shrink, and so I think there's a really good chance that this is going to help. I do think that with us doing definitive chemoradiation, it's possible that we go through this and it could shrink, and there is a possibility that it does start to grow again somewhere in the future. But this is our best chance, though, is by
And
doing chemo and radiation.
The twice a day radiation like he had 10 years
Yeah.
ago, is that,
Yeah,
he's not really,
yeah. So one of the reasons I think Dr. Harwood did the twice a day is I don't think we were doing chemotherapy at the time.
no, he was not.
Yeah, so that was part of it.
Okay.
So when we do radiation alone, sometimes we consider those sort of styles of treatment. I got to admit, that's not a style that I typically use.
No.
Dr. Harwood used it, and I love Dr. Harwood and I respect him a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But we used to work together a lot. But he used those a lot more often than I do.
Okay.
But not because
But
there's anything
that's
wrong with
because
them.
we didn't have the chemo.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So with the chemo, yeah.
Yeah, he was aggressive.
Yeah. He was. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
I think one more thing, Ms. Vicky, you want to vocalize is just to know when and if we can get a timeline on when all the other doctors involved are gonna get together and talk about the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing, but I think that's one of the things she wanted us to express or at least ask.
Yeah.
I'm getting blindsided by people walking in my room saying, I work with Dr. Brown.
Yeah. It's different
We're
people that
talking
do.
about taking you to New
Yeah.
Orleans. Stent.
So I don't.
Who's Dr. Brown?
Yeah. So he's a lung doctor, but yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know him, no, I understand. Yeah, no, so there's no specific meeting that's scheduled. I am gonna reach out to Dr. Ryan Chaston this afternoon
Okay.
to talk to him at least about the tongue,
And
so
I
that's,
think the lady that walked in from Brown saying Brown's going to meet with Ryan too this afternoon. So
Well,
Okay.
Hopefully
that
after
makes
they
us
meet.
feel better,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But just take care of that alone.
So
and
that's,
kinda
that's
get
the plan with
dialogue.
that. And then if there is a plan for transfer, like, hey, we'll go to New Orleans or something, well then Dr. Brown and I will need to kind of like, not hash it out, but you know what I mean, like,
right,
talk it over.
because with a transfer that means no radiation.
Right. Well, so if they're going to do a transfer, they probably should set up a transfer in a way that we could arrange for them to resume
To do
some
that,
radiation.
yeah,
But that would
right.
only be in a situation where we felt like the stent was absolutely needed.
Okay,
you know?
okay.
And
We're
better
not there
than-
yet.
better-
We're not there yet. Okay.
Yeah. Now there could be something that Dr. Brown knows, some reason why he would want the stent, and
Yeah.
we can talk about it. If that's the
Okay.
case. But yeah. So yeah. No, I appreciate it. It's look. I'll be honest. It's a complex case for a number of reasons. This is not the typical way that a head and neck cancer appears. That's because you have a long history of it, probably. You also have a history of radiation before, so that complicates things too. you know, and then also the seriousness of having your airway pushed on. That's another thing that makes it complex. So all those things. That's why there's so many so many dang doctors involved.
Yeah.
And that's just what complicates it a lot. But no, I mean I think we just keep on barreling through with radiation.
Okay.
We need to keep doing it.
That's
too.
what he wants. Yeah.
So, and we can talk more later in the week too. I'm gonna be here Thursday as well.
Okay.
And so
I appreciate you
we'll
talking to us.
we'll talk
Yeah,
again.
thank
then,
you
too.
so much.
Yeah, I know, and I know it's difficult being in the hospital because things can get a bit chaotic, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and then I mean I'm sure you guys can't be in the room all the time, you
No.
know, like to help out. And so then, you know, and your wife's maybe not even there all the time, and so then people are just popping in, and then y'all are trying to compare notes all the time. I mean, I know how it is.
And then you can't
I know how
talk.
it is.
It's-
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly right.
yeah, I know how it is.
People are
But,
talking for you.
yeah,
It's hard.
but for now, keep coming for the radiation. So.
Okay, that's what he wants. So
Okay,
that's
so
good.
we can bring that news to your mom that you're
Yeah.
gonna be talking with Shaston.
Yeah.
Shaston's people are gonna be talking with Dr. Brown, and everybody's on the case.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thanks.
We really appreciate
Now
it.
I'm gonna have to call the transport
Transport.
people.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
So-
you.
yeah.
so